Welcome back to Stan Lee Presents. Today we'll be taking a look at the trickster god of the Marvel Universe and a fan favorite since his days of making people bow before him, Loki Laufey-san. This video will chronicle all of the major events he was involved in from his time in Asgard, on Earth, and beyond. Before we get started, make sure you subscribe to our channel for more Marvel content like this, and hey, drop us a like if you're so inclined. It really helps us out. Alright, it's time to kick things off. Excelsior! Loki Laufey-san, born to Laufey, the Frost Giant's king, was abandoned and left for dead shortly after birth. Discovered by Odin, he was brought to Asgard and raised alongside Thor as an Asgardian prince by Odin and Frigga. Embracing his role as the god of mischief, Loki orchestrated events to sabotage Thor's coronation, leading to Thor's banishment to Earth and Loki's discovery of his true heritage. During Odin's slumber, Frigga briefly granted Loki the throne, but his reign was short-lived as Thor returned and thwarted his plans to wage war on the Nine Realms. With Odin's disapproval looming, Loki chose to plummet into space through a wormhole formed by the Bifrost Bridge's destruction. Transported through the wormhole to Sanctuary, Loki encountered the Other, who proposed serving under Thanos' command and bestowed upon him the scepter. Entrusted with the leadership of the Chitauri army, Loki's mission was to conquer Earth, contingent upon his acquisition of the Tesseract for Thanos. Upon reaching Earth, Loki successfully seized the Tesseract, utilizing its power to unleash a wormhole above New York City, initiating the Chitauri invasion. Despite his elaborate schemes, the Avengers ultimately thwarted his plans. Thor subsequently returned him to Asgard as a captive, where Odin sentenced him to eternal imprisonment within the Asgardian dungeons as punishment for his crimes. However, following Frigga's demise during the sacking of Asgard, Thor released Loki to aid in the battle against the Dark Elves, led by Malekith, who sought to utilize the power of the Aether to plunge the universe into eternal darkness. Engaged in combat against the Dark Elves in Svartalfheim, Loki staged his own death, clandestinely returning to Asgard afterward. Seizing the opportunity, he successfully dethroned Odin and assumed the role of king, reigning for several years. Throughout his rule, Loki maintained control over Asgard, dispatching Sif on missions to Earth to investigate the activities of Lorelei and Vintok, unbeknownst to the kingdom's inhabitants. Ultimately, Thor's reappearance compelled Loki to expose his deceit as they embarked on a quest together to locate Odin, arriving just in time to witness Odin's passing. With Odin's demise, Hela, his firstborn, emerged from exile, unleashing war upon the Nine Realms. Stranded on Sakaar alongside Thor, Loki aligned himself with the Grandmaster, while Thor was compelled to combat Hulk. Despite his attempts at manipulation for personal gain, Loki ultimately chose to stand alongside Thor and the Revengers in a final confrontation against Hela. It was during this battle that Loki summoned Surtur, leading to Hela's defeat as Ragnarok unfolded, resulting in the destruction of Asgard. In his final moments on Asgard, Loki seized the Tesseract from Odin's vault. Despite the destruction surrounding them, he opted to stand by his brother's side and aid in his ascension to the throne. However, the repercussions of his pact with Thanos soon caught up with him, as the Mad Titan and his Black Order intercepted the Asgardians en route to Earth. Amidst the ensuing chaos, Loki made a futile attempt on Thanos' life. In a moment of defiance, Loki mocked Thanos, declaring that he would never achieve godhood. Enraged, Thanos swiftly ended Loki's life by snapping his neck, bringing an end to the reign of the god of mischief. Early life. Adopted by Odin, Loki was born on Jotunheim, the offspring of Laufey, the Frost Giant king. Despite his royal lineage, Loki was born small and feeble for a Frost Giant, leading to his abandonment in a temple by his father, who left him to perish. In the year 965 AD, shortly after the conclusion of the war between the Giants and the Asgardians, Loki was discovered by King Odin. Taking pity on the abandoned child, Odin adopted Loki, utilizing sorcery to disguise his Frost Giant heritage and presenting him as an Asgardian. Raised alongside Odin's biological son Thor, and under the care of Odin and Frigga, Loki grew up in Thor's shadow, harboring a deep-seated envy towards his brother's destined role as king. Odin's lessons. In a discussion within Odin's treasure room regarding the future of the throne, Odin endeavored to instill in his sons the value of peace over warfare in dealing with adversaries across the Nine Realms. As both Thor and Loki expressed their readiness to assume the mantle of King of Asgard, Odin cautioned that only one of them could ultimately ascend to the throne. However, while Thor's enthusiasm for battle against frost giants and other adversaries intensified, Loki's resentment towards Thor and his desire to earn Odin's approval through his own accomplishments gradually warped his character. Once carefree and detached, Loki's ambition grew unchecked, leading him to pursue greatness at any cost, regardless of the harm it inflicted on others as long as it served his own interests. Talent for mischief. As Odin frequently devoted his time to Thor, Loki developed a close bond with Frigga. Entranced by her magical abilities, Loki observed with awe as she conjured fireworks from her hands. Frigga reassured him that one day he too would wield such power, instilling in him the belief that he was capable of achieving anything. Sensing Loki's potential insecurity in comparison to Odin and Thor's achievements, Frigga took it upon herself to impart her knowledge of sorcery to him. Under her tutelage, Loki honed his skills in Asgardian magic, mastering the art of creating illusions and forging weapons. During their youth, Loki exploited Thor's fascination with snakes by employing his illusionary prowess to transform into one. Seizing the opportunity, Loki tricked Thor into picking up the snake, only to reveal his true form and wound his brother, who miraculously survived the ordeal. In another mischievous escapade, Loki temporarily transformed Thor into a frog, briefly assuming the throne of Asgard in jest until Frog Thor intervened and thwarted his antics. Accompanied by Odin, Thor, and Loki, Asgardians journeyed to Earth, where they imparted their language, culture, and extraordinary abilities upon the Norse people. This interaction led the humans to perceive the Asgardians as divine beings, bestowing upon Thor the title God of Thunder, and dubbing Loki the God of Mischief due to his penchant for tricks and illusions. These exploits would later be immortalized in human tales and legends for centuries. One such prank involved Loki cutting a lock of Sif's hair after a romantic encounter, resulting in her retaliating with a swift punch to his face and a kick to his groin. Unfazed, Loki opted to resolve the situation with a leisurely bath and a glass of wine. Virtue Challenge. In the year 1521, while wandering through Asgard, Loki overheard the blacksmith Haldir discussing the recovery of the thought-to-be-lost Cup of Glory. Seizing upon an opportunity, Loki provoked Haldir's brother Brunok and their family, sparking a pursuit. Thor intervened, proposing a resolution through a battle of virtue and honor, to which all parties agreed. Forming a team with Thor and Sif, Loki embarked upon the challenge, only to find himself ensnared by illusions in the treasure yard of the wolves, teetering over a pit of lava. Overwhelmed by guilt, Loki contemplated the consequences of his actions as Thor broke him free from the trance and retrieved the bone of the wolves' treasure yard. Rescuing Sif from a similar fate, Loki aided her recovery by inspiring courage through his words. They proceeded to the second challenge in pursuit of the Hawk's Egg, only to find the Warriors 3 already engaged in the task upon their arrival. As Thor, Sif, and Loki approached the branch holding the coveted egg, the hawk guarding it returned. Loki swiftly conjured an illusion of a second hawk to divert its attention, allowing Sif to secure the egg safely despite a momentary slip, with both brothers rescuing her from the fall. Meanwhile, the Warriors 3 battled Asgardian wolves below. Following the skirmish, they ventured into the mine housing the Cup of Glory. Retrieving the nugget of gold and securing the cup, they were confronted by Brunok, Sigurd, and Hilda, who also coveted the treasure. Amidst the ensuing struggle, Thor unleashed lightning, inadvertently causing the mine to collapse upon their adversaries. Loki, acknowledging his selfish motives in pursuing the challenge to gain respect comparable to Thor's, apologized and confessed his intentions. Thor, understanding his brother's perspective, forgave him and devised an escape route. Their journey then intersected with Haldir, whose concern for his son was overshadowed by his fascination with the cup. Enraptured by its allure, Haldir attacked the group, hurling Thor off a cliff and seizing Loki by his hammer. However, Thor managed to recover and intervened, thwarting the assault. D.B. Cooper hijacking. In November 1971, Loki found himself on the losing end of a bet with Thor, prompting him to embark on a daring escapade on Earth. Assuming the alias of D.B. Cooper, Loki commandeered the Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 in the United States, informing stewardess Florence Schaffner of a purported bomb on board and demanding a hefty ransom of $200,000. Following protocol, the plane touched down, exchanging passengers for ransom money and providing backup parachutes for Loki's getaway. After securing the ransom, Loki leapt from the aircraft with the money and a parachute, only to be swiftly whisked away back to Asgard by Heimdall via the Bifrost Bridge, leaving behind a few scattered $20 bills. Perplexed authorities, oblivious to Loki's involvement, were left to grapple with the enigma of D.B. Cooper's identity and fate, adding yet another layer to Earth's catalog of unsolved mysteries. Trickster's schemes. Thor's royal coronation. Later, during Thor's anticipated ascension to the throne of Asgard, Loki expressed a mixture of admiration and sibling rivalry, teasing Thor about his regal appearance while affirming his love for his brother. Amidst the ceremony, their gathering was rudely interrupted by the unexpected intrusion of frost giant soldiers, summoned by Loki himself, who sought to pilfer the casket of ancient winters. Halting the proceedings, Odin deployed the formidable Destroyer, which dispatched the invading frost giants, albeit at the cost of the Einherjargard's lives. Subsequently, as Thor, Odin, and Loki investigated the aftermath in Odin's vault, they encountered the grim scene of fallen frost giants and Asgardian guards. Enraged, Thor clamored for a retaliatory strike against Jotunheim, but Odin remained resolute in his refusal. Asserting his authority, Odin reminded Thor of his yet unrealized kingship, prompting Loki to silently contemplate his own machinations. Manipulating Thor. Appalled by the unfolding events, Thor vented his fury by overturning a dinner table before retreating into a brooding silence. Loki, seeking to console his distraught brother, approached Thor and took a seat beside him, offering solace over Odin's decision not to crown him as king in light of the frost giant's actions. With calm demeanor, Loki engaged Thor in conversation, subtly influencing him by aligning with his desire for retribution for the lives lost in the attack on Asgard. Agreeing with Thor's conviction that Jotunheim must be held accountable for their transgressions bolstered Thor's resolve. Observing Thor's growing confidence, Loki strategically maneuvered the conversation to goad Thor into defying their father's orders and launching an unauthorized assault on Jotunheim to confront King Laufey. Despite feigning skepticism about the plan's recklessness, Loki subtly encouraged Thor's decision while maintaining a facade of dissent. Accompanied by Lady Sif and the Warriors 3, Thor, spurred by righteous anger, led the group to the Bifrost Bridge to embark on their journey to Jotunheim. Just before their departure, Loki covertly informed a guard of their intentions, ensuring Odin's awareness and Thor's eventual punishment. Upon reaching Heimdall, the guardian of the Bifrost Bridge, Loki attempted to deceive him, only to find that Heimdall was already privy to their true motives. Despite the breach of royal decree, Heimdall granted them passage to Jotunheim, driven by his own curiosity about the frost giant's incursion into Asgard. As the group prepared to depart, Loki faced mockery from Volstagg and Fandral, yet he stood firm alongside the warriors as Heimdall cautioned that any threat to Asgard's safety would lead to dire consequences, including potential abandonment on Jotunheim. Attack on Jotunheim. Upon arriving on Jotunheim, the group surveyed the desolate landscape, ravaged by the aftermath of the previous Battle of Jotunheim. Despite Hogun's apprehension about their presence, they pressed on with their mission, with Sif questioning the whereabouts of the frost giants. As they traversed the planet, they eventually encountered Laufey, the frost giant king, who promptly demanded their departure. Ignoring his admonition, Thor pressed for answers regarding the frost giant's incursion into Asgard to steal the casket of ancient winters from Odin's vault. Tensions escalated swiftly, with Thor and Laufey exchanging threats after Odin's honor was impugned. Sensing the overwhelming odds against them, Loki urged his brother to retreat, but Thor's pride prevailed. Yet, as they began their withdrawal, a frost giant provoked Thor, prompting the prince to unleash his fury with Mjolnir, sparking a violent confrontation. The frost giants ambushed the Asgardians, igniting a brutal skirmish. While Sif and Volstagg relied on their physical prowess and combat skills, Loki employed his cunning and magic to confound their foes, luring one to his demise with an illusion. Amidst the chaos, Volstagg sustained injuries, warning the others of their peril. However, when Loki inadvertently made contact with rays, he discovered his immunity to harm, evidenced by his unblemished blue arm akin to that of a frost giant. Momentarily transfixed by this revelation, Loki swiftly dispatched rays before his arm reverted to its natural hue, leaving Loki to grapple with the unsettling implications of his newfound ability. As their situation grew increasingly dire and Fandral fell victim to a frost giant's spear, Loki swiftly dispatched the assailant before issuing a command for the Warriors 3 to retreat. Despite Loki's order, Thor adamantly refused to cease fighting, leading to a fatal confrontation with a frost beast. When cornered by Laufey's forces, Odin intervened in an attempt to restore peace between Asgard and Jotunheim. However, Laufey accused Thor of reigniting their age-old conflict. Acknowledging the grim reality, Odin escorted the group back to Asgard via the Bifrost Bridge. Back in Asgard, Odin's anger towards Thor remained palpable as he ordered the warriors to tend to Fandral's wounds while Loki remained by his family's side. Observing Odin's stern rebuke of Thor, Loki remained silent, witnessing Odin's declaration that Thor had precipitated a disastrous war, endangering innocent Asgardians. Despite Loki's attempted intervention, Odin silenced him with a fierce reprimand, branding Thor unworthy and stripping him of his armor and powers before banishing him to Earth. As Thor was cast out of Asgard, Loki watched solemnly as Odin enchanted Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, ensuring that only one deemed worthy could wield its power. Refusal to help. Later, within the grand halls of Asgard, Loki listened intently as Volstagg and the others debated the consequences of allowing Thor to pursue his vendetta. Despite Volstagg's protests, the Warriors 3 acknowledged the inevitability of Thor's mission once he had committed to it, recognizing that their interference would have been futile. Fandral emphasized that Thor's banishment, though harsh, spared him from a potentially graver fate, while Volstagg questioned how the Einherjar Guard had become privy to their plans. Despite grappling with the implications of his true lineage following the encounter with the Frost Giants, Loki confessed to the Warriors and Sif that he was the informant who disclosed their journey to Jotunheim, displaying little remorse. Despite Sif's earnest pleas, Loki adamantly refused to intercede with Odin to bring Thor back home, arguing that Thor's recklessness rendered him unsuitable for kingship and storming out of the room. Learning his true heritage. Contemplating the startling revelation of his immunity to the Frost Giants' harm during their skirmish, Loki resolved to delve deeper into the matter. Venturing to Odin's vault, he stumbled upon the Casket of Ancient Winters, the artifact seized after the Battle of Jotunheim. Upon touching it, his skin once again assumed the cold blue hue, confirming his fears. His introspection was interrupted by Odin's arrival, who ordered him to desist. Tearful and distressed, Loki defied his father, demanding answers about his true identity and origins. As Loki pressed for the truth, Odin revealed how he had discovered the infant Loki amidst the aftermath of the Frost Giants' defeat and taken him in. Horrified, Loki questioned Odin's motives in light of the massacre, prompting Odin to justify his actions as an act of mercy towards an innocent child. Unconvinced, Loki demanded the unvarnished truth, questioning whether he was merely a pawn in Odin's pursuit of peace, or a discarded relic destined to languish in Odin's vault until deemed useful. Expressing his newfound understanding of Odin's favoritism towards Thor, Loki erupted into a furious tirade, accusing Odin of manipulating him for political ends until the strain proved too much for Odin, who succumbed to the Odin sleep. Consumed by turmoil, Loki's anger gave way to confusion and concern as he desperately called out to the Einherjar for assistance, grappling with the sudden upheaval of his reality. Taking the throne. Amidst Odin's temporary incapacitation during the Odin sleep, Loki maintained vigil by his father's bedside alongside Frigga. Struggling with the revelation of his Frost Giant heritage and his lineage as Laufey's son, Loki sought answers from Frigga, questioning why the truth had been concealed for so long. Frigga, in turn, reassured him that their intent had been to shield him from feeling a sense of otherness. During their heartfelt conversation, Frigga urged Loki to hold on to hope for Odin's recovery and Thor's eventual return from exile on Earth, though Loki harbored doubts about Thor's prospects. Despite Frigga's attempts to console him, Loki found it difficult to reconcile with the truth, departing from his father's bedside in turmoil. Before he could leave, however, a guard arrived, presenting Loki with Odin's formidable staff and declaring him the new king of Asgard in Odin's absence. Embracing his newfound authority, Loki ascended the throne in Odin's stead, reveling in the magnitude of power bestowed upon him as he pondered strategies to consolidate his rule over the 9 realms. As King Loki held court at the royal palace of Valaskjalf, he received an unexpected visit from the Warriors 3 and Lady Sif, who were taken aback by Odin's disappearance and Loki's sudden elevation to kingship. Asserting his authority, Loki instructed them to bring forth any concerns they had directly to him. While reluctantly acknowledging Loki's new status, the warriors pleaded for an end to Thor's banishment, only to be met with Loki's firm refusal, citing the need for continuity in Asgard's leadership, particularly in light of potential conflict with Jotunheim. Before any further debate could ensue, Loki dismissed them, prompting Fandral to swiftly usher Sif away before any confrontation could escalate within the royal chambers. Keeping Thor in exile. In a bid to safeguard his claim to the throne and prevent Thor from returning to Asgard, Loki ventured to Earth, where Thor had been apprehended by S.H.I.E.L.D. while attempting to retrieve Mjolnir. Upon meeting his brother, Thor inquired about the situation on Asgard, suspecting trouble with Jotunheim. Deceptively, Loki fabricated a story, informing Thor of Odin's supposed demise, aiming to crush his spirits and deter any thoughts of reclaiming his birthright. Expanding on his falsehood, Loki asserted that Odin's passing, compounded by the recent conflict with Laufey and the Frost Giants, had burdened him with the throne's responsibilities. He conveyed that Asgard's stability hinged on Thor's exile. Despite Thor's attempts to negotiate his return, Loki claimed that Frigga had forbidden it. Resigned to his fate, Thor bid farewell to his brother, acknowledging the weight of their family's tragedies resting upon him as he accepted his indefinite stay on Earth. Leaving Thor in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s custody for questioning by Phil Coulson, Loki attempted to lift Mjolnir, but failed, his betrayal of Thor's trust marking him unworthy of wielding the hammer, much to his chagrin. Starting a war. Dealing with Laufey. In a strategic move to consolidate power, Loki journeyed to Jotunheim, where he sought an audience with Laufey. Initially met with hostility, Loki revealed himself as the orchestrator of the Frost Giants' incursion into Asgard, framing it as a mere ploy to disrupt Thor's ascension to the throne and prevent his brother from ruling Asgard. Proposing a mutually beneficial arrangement, Loki offered Laufey the opportunity to assassinate Odin during the Odin Sleep and reclaim the Casket of Ancient Winters, which Odin had taken from Jotunheim in the past. By doing so, Laufey could restore Jotunheim's former glory. However, Loki cautioned against Laufey personally executing Odin as it would alienate the Asgardian populace. Reluctantly, Laufey agreed to Loki's terms and permitted him to depart. Upon his return to Asgard via the Bifrost Bridge, Loki was immediately challenged by Heimdall, who suspected him of concealing his true motives during his time in Jotunheim. Loki deflected suspicion by suggesting that Heimdall's powers had waned with age, further stoking Heimdall's doubts. Doubting Heimdall's loyalty to Odin, Loki reminded him of his duty to obey the king unquestioningly. Heimdall acquiesced, prompting Loki to command him to restrict access to the Bifrost until the damage caused by Thor's previous actions had been repaired. Sending the Destroyer. Loki soon discovered that the Warriors 3 and Lady Sif had defied him, utilizing Himinbjorg to journey to Earth via the Bifrost Bridge. Realizing that his machinations would soon be exposed to his brother, Loki concluded that he had no recourse but to silence all those who had betrayed the throne. Thus, he summoned his most formidable weapon, the Destroyer, and instructed it to travel to Earth, laying waste to everything in its path and eliminating his adversaries. Enraged by the betrayal, Loki confronted Heimdall at the terminus of the Bifrost, accusing him of treachery. Heimdall, however, countered by asserting his knowledge of Loki's role in the Frost Giants' incursion into Asgard, branding him a traitor to his own kin and the people of Asgard. In retribution for Heimdall's disloyalty to the crown, Loki stripped him of all titles and banished him from the realm indefinitely. Unshackled from his allegiance to the new king, Heimdall retaliated by unsheathing Hofund and launching a furious assault on Loki. Anticipating such a move against his life, Loki utilized his magic to summon the Casket of Ancient Winters, freezing Heimdall in ice before he could land a fatal blow. With his nemesis immobilized, Loki callously abandoned Heimdall to his icy prison. Intent on eliminating any remaining threats to his plans, Loki dispatched the Destroyer to Earth to pursue and eradicate Thor and his cohorts. From the vantage point of the royal palace of Valaskjalf, Loki observed as the Destroyer descended upon Earth, wreaking havoc and instigating a fierce confrontation between S.H.I.E.L.D., Lady Sif, and the Warriors 3, devastating the small town where Thor had taken refuge. Witnessing no alternative resolution to the conflict, the still deprived Thor stepped forth to confront the Destroyer, utterly unarmed, and beseeched his brother to spare the humans, and instead claim his life. Agreeing to this proposition, Loki commanded the Destroyer to strike Thor, shattering his bones and ending his life. However, this act unexpectedly proved Thor's worthiness, prompting the return of his former powers, which he swiftly employed to vanquish the Destroyer with Mjolnir, leaving Loki to watch in abject horror. Betraying Laufey. Realizing the necessity of advancing his schemes, Loki extended a welcome to Laufey and his contingent of Frost Giants, leading them to Odin and passing the frozen figure of Heimdall on their path. Upon reaching Odin's chambers, Laufey assailed Frigga and approached the defenseless Odin, who lay vulnerable in his Odin sleep. As Laufey poised to execute Odin with an ice blade, Loki returned and betrayed his true father, striking him down from behind with Gungnir. Standing over Laufey's stunned form, Loki proclaimed that his demise came at the hands of Odin's son, before dispatching the Frost Giant King with a potent blast from Odin's spear. In the aftermath, as Frigga rushed to her son's side, Thor, his powers fully restored by Heimdall's survival, returned to Asgard through the Bifrost Bridge. Thor recounted Loki's treacherous attempt on his life with the Destroyer, while Loki sought to manipulate the situation to his advantage. Engaging in a fierce altercation, Loki unleashed the energy of his spear upon Thor, propelling him through a wall before departing for Himinbjorg. Duel at the Rainbow Bridge. Arriving at the Bifrost Bridge, Loki redirected its power toward Jotunheim, initiating the planet's destruction. Employing the Casket of Ancient Winters to freeze the energy, Loki ensured the planet's gradual demise, intending to eradicate the frost giants and cement his legacy as the monarch who ended the war. Thor arrived to witness the devastation wrought by his brother and pleaded with him to spare the entire race from annihilation, but Loki remained resolute, taunting and threatening Thor. When Thor attempted to wield Mjolnir to halt the destruction, it became evident that he was powerless to stop it. Defending his actions, Loki argued that exterminating the frost giants was justified. Eventually, he resorted to threatening Jane Foster's life, goading Thor into a furious attack to protect her. The siblings engaged in brutal confrontation, with Loki frequently resorting to deceit to gain an upper hand. Exploiting the capabilities of Gungnir, Loki utilized it as both a weapon and to launch energy blasts at Thor, reveling in his ability to outsmart and strike his enraged brother. Their clash culminated in a charge at each other, hurling them through a wall and onto the Rainbow Bridge. As Loki teetered on the edge, barely clinging to the precipice, he implored Thor for aid. Seemingly willing to help, Thor leaned down only to realize too late that Loki had ensnared him in an illusion, stabbing him in the side. With Thor incapacitated, Loki multiplied himself, each image laughing at his fallen brother. Enraged, Thor slammed Mjolnir into the ground, generating a shockwave that sent Loki reeling. Losing all hope. Injured and pinned to the Rainbow Bridge by Mjolnir, Loki watched as Thor contemplated how to halt the devastation consuming Jotunheim, knowing that there was no apparent means to quell the Bifrost energy beam. Amid Loki's taunts, Thor recognized the only solution: destroying the Rainbow Bridge to prevent the deaths of countless frost giants. Ignoring Loki's protests and reminders of losing Jane Foster, Thor wielded his hammer to dismantle the bridge, much to Loki's horror. In a desperate attempt to thwart his brother, Loki lunged at him, only to witness the bridge's destruction and find himself airborne alongside Thor. Plunging into the abyss, both brothers were snatched from imminent doom by Odin, roused from his Odin sleep. Hanging before the void, Loki pleaded his case only to face Odin's disavowal of his actions. Crushed by his father's rejection, Loki relinquished his grip on Thor and descended into the abyss, drawn into a wormhole formed by the Bifrost Bridge's residual energy. New alliance, working for Thanos. Venturing through the wormhole, Loki emerged in a distant region of the cosmos known as Sanctuary, where he encountered the formidable Mad Titan Thanos and his enigmatic ally the Other. Thanos proposed a pact. In exchange for Loki retrieving the Tesseract, currently under S.H.I.E.L.D.'s scrutiny on Earth, Thanos would grant Loki dominion over the planet. Accepting the deal, Thanos equipped Loki with a scepter containing a potent blue gem, serving as both a formidable weapon and a tool for mind control. Unbeknownst to Loki, wielding the scepter subtly influenced his thoughts, stoking his animosity towards humans and his own brother. Under Thanos' guidance, Loki learned to manipulate individuals, as demonstrated when he influenced Dr. Erik Selvig to cooperate with S.H.I.E.L.D.'s study of the Tesseract. Meanwhile, Frigga, sensing Loki's survival, attempted to reach out to him, but Loki rebuffed her, deeming it an inopportune moment for reconciliation. Chitauri invasion. Arrival on Earth. Accepting Thanos' proposition with unwavering confidence, Loki refocused his attention on Erik Selvig, who had been summoned by S.H.I.E.L.D. to unravel the mysteries of the Tesseract. Selvig's comprehension of the cube's potential grew under Loki's influence, leading him to devise equipment to harness its power. When the opportune moment arrived, Loki activated the Tesseract, generating a portal through the Tesseract accelerator that teleported him across space to its earthly location, the primary facility of Project Pegasus. Upon his arrival, he was immediately met with resistance from S.H.I.E.L.D. agents demanding his surrender. Unleashing powerful energy blasts, Loki effortlessly dispatched his assailants, their bullets proving futile. With swift precision, Loki utilized the scepter's abilities to dominate and control Hawkeye, Selvig, and another agent, compelling them to serve him with unwavering obedience. As Loki asserted his dominance, Nick Fury attempted to protect the Tesseract and evade Loki's grasp. Engaging in a tense exchange, Loki revealed his Asgardian identity and articulated his vision of a world liberated from what he deemed the illusion of freedom, pledging himself as humanity's sole ruler. Fury challenged Loki's intentions, resisting his assertion of peace through domination. Despite Fury's attempts to thwart him, Loki maneuvered to secure the Tesseract, ordering Hawkeye to eliminate Fury. Evading Maria Hill's intervention, Loki and his entourage departed the compound just as the Tesseract's unleashed energy consumed it entirely. Amidst the chaos, Fury, surviving the assassination attempt, pursued Loki in a helicopter, determined to prevent the Asgardian from escaping with the potent artifact. In response to Fury's pursuit, Loki discharged a powerful blast from his scepter, downing the helicopter. Despite the onslaught, Loki remained composed, satisfied with the unfolding success of his scheme. Testing the Tesseract. In due time, Loki and his burgeoning army secured a base to strategize their next moves with the Tesseract. Meanwhile, Erik Selvig continued his experiments, seeking to harness and control its formidable power, constructing a new Tesseract accelerator. Observing his men at work, Loki noticed the scepter's gem glowing, beckoning to him. Entering a trance-like state, he projected himself metaphysically to the other and the Chitauri army across the vast expanse of space. From the sanctuary, Loki taunted the Chitauri, questioning their purported might. The other, in turn, reminded Loki of his redemption after his prior defeat by Asgard. Warning of Thanos' merciless retribution should Loki fail in his mission or allow the Tesseract to slip from his grasp, the other instilled a newfound sense of urgency in Loki, emphasizing the dire consequences of disappointing the Mad Titan. Rattled by the prospect of failure, Loki convened with Selvig and Barton to devise their next steps. Selvig marveled at the Tesseract's power and the insights it offered, emphasizing the need for Iridium to stabilize the portal. Loki also conferred with Hawkeye about Nick Fury's assembling team of Avengers. To acquire the Iridium, Loki led Hawkeye and other compromised agents to Stuttgart, Germany. Skirmish in Germany. In Germany, Loki orchestrated a diversion by disrupting a gala at a grand museum, while Hawkeye, accompanied by a small team, raided a heavily guarded installation for Iridium. To breach the security measures, Loki obtained Heinrich Schaefer's eyeball, a crucial component for Hawkeye's mission. Disguised in a suit, Loki swiftly subdued Schaefer, securing him on a bench before surgically extracting his eyeball with a specialized device, granting Barton access to acquire the Iridium. Exiting amidst the chaos into the streets, Loki manifested multiple illusions of himself, ensnaring the terrified bystanders and demanding their submission. As he beheld the fear-stricken humans, Loki reveled in his perceived superiority, proclaiming their destiny to kneel before him. However, one defiant man challenged him, refusing to yield. Despite Loki's assertion of his unparalleled status, the man rebuked him, likening him to countless other would-be conquerors throughout history. As Loki prepared to eliminate the dissenting man, Captain America intervened, deflecting Loki's energy blast with his shield. Shortly after, Black Widow arrived in an armed Quinjet, adding to the challenge from the sky. In a tense confrontation, Loki clashed with Captain America, their skirmish escalating until Iron Man's arrival shifted the tide. Iron Man's intervention forced Loki to concede, realizing the odds were against him. Surrendering and discarding his armor, Loki allowed himself to be apprehended by the Avengers, all while secretly plotting his next move. Captured. En route to the helicarrier aboard the Quinjet, Loki remained silent while Captain America and Iron Man speculated on his motives and the ease with which he allowed himself to be captured. Their discussion halted abruptly as lightning heralded Thor's arrival, who promptly retrieved Loki from the jet, freeing him from the Avengers' grasp. Upon a nearby mountain, under the watchful gaze of Hugin and Munin, Thor attempted to reason with his brother, urging him to recall their shared past and return home to Asgard, surrendering the Tesseract. However, Loki rebuffed Thor's appeals, harboring resentment and denying Odin's paternity. Despite Thor's insistence, Loki remained obstinate, refusing to disclose Thanos' involvement, much to Thor's frustration. In a bid to extract information about the Tesseract, Thor confronted Loki, only to be interrupted by Iron Man, resulting in a skirmish that sent Thor tumbling off the mountainside. Perched above, Loki observed with satisfaction as his adversaries turned on each other, vying for control. Amidst the escalating conflict, Thor and Iron Man engaged in a heated duel, which was eventually halted by Captain America, who urged them to set aside their differences and unite against their common foe. Questioned by S.H.I.E.L.D. With the Avengers and Thor now aligning themselves as allies in the conflict, they jointly escorted Loki into S.H.I.E.L.D. custody aboard the helicarrier. As armed guards escorted Loki through the corridors, passing Bruce Banner's laboratory, Loki's unsettling smile toward the scientist unsettled Banner and raised suspicion among the others. Placed within a containment capsule, unbeknownst to Banner, designed to confine a rogue Hulk, Loki faced the threat of a 30,000-foot plummet should he attempt to escape or breach the cell, a measure intended to be fatal. Taunting Nick Fury about his struggles to comprehend and control the Tesseract and his recruitment of a disparate group to safeguard Earth, Loki sought to sow doubt. However, Fury maintained his composure, warning Loki of the potential repercussions of his actions. Loki's claims of newfound power only served to affirm his arrogance, prompting Fury's departure. Loki's mere presence and unwavering confidence posed a disruptive force capable of fracturing the unity of the group of heroes tasked with thwarting his plans. Tricked by Black Widow. As Loki paced within his cell, Black Widow approached, ostensibly offering a deal for Clint Barton's freedom. Engaging in a battle of wits, Loki probed into her past and her connection with Barton, gradually uncovering her deeper vulnerabilities. Mentioning Antonia Dreykov, daughter of General Dreykov, whom Black Widow and Barton supposedly targeted in an assassination attempt, Loki insinuated knowledge of her past misdeeds and murders as part of the Red Room before her S.H.I.E.L.D. tenure. Promising to manipulate Barton into tormenting and killing Romanoff, Loki relished in the distress it caused her. However, she skillfully turned the tables, suggesting that the real monster among them was not Loki, but Banner. Revealing Loki's plan to use Hulk to destroy the helicarrier and its defenders, she departed to warn the others. Loki's smile hinted at his intent to incite conflict within the Avengers, ultimately turning them against each other and unleashing Hulk as a weapon against his former allies. Attack on the helicarrier. Loki's plot involving Hulk was just one facet of his true intentions. Another jet carrying Hawkeye and the compromised agents arrived to aid him, responding to a signal from the Scepter. Hawkeye triggered a massive explosion, dividing the Avengers. Amidst the chaos, the injured Banner transformed into Hulk, wreaking havoc on the helicarrier while Loki remained in his cell, relishing the chaos unfolding all around him. Soon, one of Loki's controlled agents liberated him from confinement. Utilizing illusions, Loki deceived Thor into entering the cell, trapping him inside and taunting his brother for falling prey to the same ruse again. Just as Loki prepared to jettison the cell from the helicarrier to eliminate Thor, Phil Coulson intervened, wielding the Destroyer armor prototype gun, and calmly demanded Loki's surrender, uncertain of the weapon's true power. Exploiting his illusions, Loki maneuvered behind the valiant S.H.I.E.L.D. agent and lethally pierced him with the scepter. Thor witnessed in horror as Coulson collapsed, mortally wounded. Meeting his brother's gaze, Loki callously returned to the controls, ejecting Thor, confined in the Hulk cell, into a fatal freefall from the helicarrier. As Coulson lay gravely injured, he mustered the strength to warn Loki of his impending defeat. Dismissing this warning, Loki believed victory was assured with the Avengers supposedly vanquished. However, Coulson retaliated, firing the Destroyer gun, sending Loki hurtling through a wall. Though he reclaimed the scepter, Black Widow freed Hawkeye from mind control. Subsequently, Loki boarded a Quinjet bound for New York City, where Eric Selvig awaited with the Tesseract at Stark Tower to finalize their experiments. Battle of New York. Tony Stark's challenge. As Eric Selvig arranged the upgraded Tesseract accelerator atop the skyscraper, Loki readied himself to welcome his Chitauri army and initiate his short-lived conquest of Earth. Iron Man, having survived the assault on the helicarrier and deciphered Loki's plans, intercepted him at Stark Tower. Loki observed with confidence as Stark touched down on the tower's landing pad, abandoning his damaged Iron Man suit and entering the building to personally confront the God of Mischief. Offering Loki a drink, Stark asserted that once the Chitauri arrived, nothing could thwart him. In response, Stark queried what Loki feared. Stark cautioned him that the Avengers, united, posed a formidable threat. Loki scoffed at the notion, citing their previous encounter as evidence of their division. Stark retorted that they were merely provoked and that if they failed to safeguard Earth, they would avenge its destruction at Loki's hands. He also asserted Hulk's superiority over Loki and his army, much to Loki's chagrin. Growing impatient with the warnings, Loki attempted to subdue Stark with the scepter, only to be thwarted by the arc reactor in Stark's chest. Stark ridiculed the failed attempt, provoking Loki further. Annoyed, Loki hurled Stark out of a window, only to be surprised when a newly constructed Iron Man suit pursued him. As the fully armored Iron Man retaliated, avenging Phil Coulson, Loki found himself under attack once more. Before their conflict could escalate, the Tesseract accelerator opened a portal in the sky, allowing Loki's Chitauri army to flood through, initiating the invasion of Earth. Iron Man left Loki to confront the incoming army, engaging them single-handedly. Meanwhile, Loki regrouped, relishing the imminent triumph. Stepping onto the observation deck of Stark Tower, he donned his full armor and beheld burning New York City below, reveling in the devastation he had wrought. Showdown with Thor. Confronted by Thor, who had miraculously survived his fall from the helicarrier, Loki was demanded to deactivate the Tesseract or face its destruction at the hands of the God of Thunder. Refusing the demand, Loki asserted that nothing could thwart this war. Engaged in their second bout, the clash of Loki's scepter against Thor's hammer resulted in destructive blasts that nearly obliterated the Stark Tower logo adorning the balcony, scattering debris and shattering giant letters. As the battle raged on, Loki downed a Quinjet carrying the other Avengers. The confrontation reached a stalemate with the brothers grappling each other's necks. Thor implored Loki to observe the destruction he had wrought, and questioned whether he truly believed it would culminate in his reign. Momentarily uncertain, Loki pondered Thor's plea for cooperation to end the chaos and seek redemption. However, the Tesseract's influence over his mind prevailed over his fleeting guilt. Instead of yielding to Thor's appeal, Loki plunged a throwing knife into Thor's stomach, preparing to deliver a fatal blow with the scepter as he knelt in mockery of Thor's sentiment. But rather than submission, Thor's response was fury. He disarmed Loki and subjected him to a relentless barrage of blows to the face, eventually overpowering him and slamming him into the shattered balcony. Determined not to face defeat and capture so early in the Chitauri invasion, Loki threw himself off the building, landing atop one of the Chitauri chariots. Assuming command of the attack on New York City, Loki unleashed devastation, raining down upon the helpless populace with a barrage of gunfire, destroying vehicles and claiming numerous innocent lives in massive explosions. Meanwhile, the Avengers pooled their efforts to halt his rampage and safeguard the city's inhabitants. Humiliating defeat. When Hulk obliterated the initial Leviathan, Loki ordered the Chitauri forces from the other side of the open portal to unleash the remaining armada, sending scores of Leviathans and numerous Chitauri soldiers, overpowering the defenses of New York City. During an aerial pursuit where Loki chased Black Widow, his aircraft was demolished when he confidently caught one of Hawkeye's arrows, triggering an explosion that caused him to crash back into Stark Tower. As Loki rose to his feet, preparing to rejoin the fray, Hulk confronted him and hurled him through a wall into the main chamber. Upon regaining his footing, Loki demanded Hulk cease his actions, asserting his superiority as an Asgardian god and refusing to be intimidated. However, Loki's defiant speech only provoked Hulk into simply grabbing him and repeatedly slamming him into the ground, catching Loki completely off guard. Rendered too stunned to continue fighting or issuing threats, Loki lay on the ground, more physically injured than he had ever been before. Aftermath. Struggling to move after the thrashing he received from Hulk, Loki eventually mustered the strength to crawl, only to find himself confronted by the Avengers, who had vanquished the Chitauri army and closed the Tesseract's portal. With Black Widow holding the scepter and Hawkeye aiming an arrow directly at his face, Loki acknowledged his defeat and quietly requested that drink Tony Stark had offered earlier. Disregarding his request, the Avengers took him into custody. As he was being handcuffed, Loki mockingly transformed into Captain America only to be silenced by Thor, who placed a muzzle over his mouth, while Loki's scepter was confiscated by Strike. When Hulk was denied entry to the elevator due to weight restrictions and was instructed to take the stairs, Loki waved smugly at the infuriated Hulk. While the Avengers were escorting Loki out of Stark Tower, they were intercepted by Alexander Pierce and a group of Hydra operatives posing as SHIELD agents. Pierce sought to negotiate Loki's custody for his crimes against humanity and the Tesseract. This sparked a tense exchange between Thor, Stark, and Pierce, with Loki observing the unfolding events. Ultimately, Nick Fury permitted Thor to take Loki and the Tesseract back to Asgard, recognizing that they would be better off there than on Earth. Thus, Loki was escorted to an open area in Central Park alongside his brother. With farewells exchanged between the Avengers, Thor harnessed the power of the Tesseract to transport them both back to Asgard, where Loki would face the judgment of Asgardian justice under the rule of Odin. Imprisoned. After the Chitauri debacle, Loki found himself under the custody of Thor, who escorted him back to Asgard to face Odin's judgment for his myriad crimes. Upon his arrival for trial, Loki greeted Frigga, questioning if he had finally earned her approval, despite her pleas for him not to worsen the situation. Loki, in his characteristic manner, joked that the situation couldn't deteriorate further. Odin intervened, silencing their exchange and summoning Loki forward. Unperturbed, Loki continued to trivialize the proceedings, rattling his chains and dismissing the gravity of the situation. He attempted to rationalize his actions on Earth by asserting his desire to rule over humans as a deity, drawing a comparison to the millennia of Asgardian rule. Odin swiftly refuted this notion, asserting that they were not gods. Odin derided Loki's aspirations, reminding him of his true heritage as a discarded son of Laufey, destined to perish on Jotunheim. He acknowledged that it was Frigga's affection that spared Loki's life, condemning him to eternal imprisonment. With a solemn declaration, Odin addressed him by his full name, Loki Laufeyson, before consigning him to the depths of the Asgardian dungeons beneath the palace. Return of the Dark Elves. Solitude in prison. Sentenced to eternal imprisonment, Loki found himself confined to a cell deep within the Asgardian dungeons beneath the imposing royal palace of Valaskjolf. With countless years ahead, his sole solace lay in observing the arrival of new inmates and delving into the books thoughtfully provided by Frigga. However, as time wore on, Loki's bitterness towards Odin grew, fueled by what he perceived as deceit and a harsh punishment. A year after the cataclysmic events of the Battle of New York, Loki remained confined within his cell, unaware of the turmoil unfolding across the 9 realms in the wake of the Rainbow Bridge's destruction. Exploiting the chaos, a band of space pirates known as the Marauders launched an assault on Vanaheim. Their subsequent defeat and imprisonment brought them into proximity with Loki's cell, adding a new dimension to his solitude. Despite Odin's decree, Frigga persisted in communicating with Loki, often appearing to him via projection. She continued to supply him with reading material, striving to maintain a connection. During one such visit, Frigga endeavored to prompt Loki into reflecting on his actions during the Chitauri invasion and acknowledging his wrongdoing. Yet, Loki, steadfast in his defiance, rebuffed her counsel, asserting that neither she nor Odin held the right to pass judgment on him, dismissing them as his true family. Sacking of Asgard. Sequestered within the confines of his cell in the Asgardian dungeons, Loki whiled away the hours by tossing and catching trinkets, seeking solace in the mundane. His tranquility shattered when blood-curdling screams pierced the air, drawing the attention of the Einherjar, who hastened to investigate. Peering out, Loki witnessed a marauder metamorphosing into the formidable Curse, empowered by a Curse stone and breaking free from captivity. As Curse unleashed havoc, proclaiming his intent to annihilate Asgard and its rulers, Loki observed with a twisted amusement. Content to remain in his cell, he found perverse delight in directing the Dark Elf to the exit, seizing yet another opportunity to vex Odin. Amidst the chaos, Loki remained unperturbed, engrossed in his reading, even as the clash between guards and escaped prisoners echoed through the dungeons, with Thor and the Warriors 3 adding to the tumult. With a thunderous crash heralding the arrival of a Dark Elf hero, chaos engulfed the royal palace of Valaskjalf as Malekith's forces assailed Asgard in their quest for the Aether. Despite the apparent victory of Asgard's defenders, the news of Frigga's demise at the hands of the Dark Elves brought a tempest of emotions to Loki. Concealing his turmoil behind a facade of composure, Loki unleashed a torrent of rage, demolishing his cell in a frenzy of grief-fueled destruction, obliterating every trace of comfort bestowed upon him by Frigga and succumbing to the anguish of her loss. Liberation. Amidst the rubble of his shattered cell and the absence of solace, Loki momentarily veiled his disarrayed appearance with an illusion when Thor visited him, though Thor saw through the facade. Thor sought Loki's aid in confronting Malekith on Svartalfheim, recognizing Loki's knowledge of interrealm pathways as invaluable. Promising vengeance for Frigga's demise and freedom as recompense for his cooperation, Thor cautioned Loki of dire consequences should he betray their pact, to which Loki reluctantly agreed. Embracing newfound freedom and relishing the allure of adventure, Loki engaged in banter with Thor, jesting about his choice not to employ brute force to escape. Employing his magic to transform Thor into Lady Sif and himself into various personas, including an Asgardian warrior and Captain America, Loki teased Thor for his apparent affinity for the Avengers. Despite Thor's assurances, he shackled Loki instead of arming him, prompting Loki's feigned indifference. Along their journey, Thor's encounters with the Einherjar soldiers reinforced the necessity of restraint, leading Loki to make a futile attempt at escape. Facing Jane Foster's reproach for his actions in New York City, Loki maintained his facade of amusement, jesting with Thor before their departure. Navigating the crashed Dark Elf Harrow, Loki and Thor exchanged playful jabs, with Loki critiquing Thor's flying skills and suggesting he pilot the ship. When Foster succumbed to the Aether's effects, Loki callously queried her conditions, chiding Thor's flawed plan. Transferred to an Asgardian skiff under Fandrel's command, Loki marveled at his successful ruse against Thor. As they evaded Einherjar forces, Loki piloted the skiff to a concealed location, facilitating their passage to Svartalfheim. A tense truce. In Svartalfheim, Loki steered the Asgardian skiff while Thor attended to Jane Foster, who was recovering from the Aether's effects. Taunting Thor about his affection for a mortal, Loki needled his brother, predicting Foster's imminent demise and contrasting it with his own longevity as an Asgardian. Stoking Thor's ire, Loki attributed the Dark Elves' assault to Thor's imprisonment of him in the Asgardian dungeons, almost provoking Thor to violence. However, Thor restrained himself, mindful of Frigga's wishes. Loki contended that while Thor's restraint was warranted, it wouldn't surprise their late mother. When Thor expressed a desire to trust him, Loki cynically advised him to rely on his anger. Battle of Svartalfheim. Upon reaching Svartalfheim, Loki and Thor surveyed the desolate landscape, observing Malekith and his Dark Elf army emerging from their ark to meet their adversaries. Despite Loki's skepticism about the plan's chances of success, Thor unshackled his brother, preparing for combat, prompting Loki to question Thor's trust in him. Thor inquired if Loki trusted him, to which Loki admitted he did not. In accordance with their strategy, Loki feigned betrayal, ostensibly stabbing Thor and casting him off the cliff's edge. Taunting his brother before the watching dark elves, Loki conjured an illusion of severing Thor's hand. Then, presenting Jane Foster to the dark elves, Loki professed loyalty to their cause and a desire to see Asgard fall. As Malekith began absorbing the Aether from Foster, Thor and Loki revealed their deception. Loki dispelled the illusion and shielded Foster, while Thor unleashed lightning from Mjolnir, causing an explosion that scattered the Aether. Despite Malekith's absorption of the remnants, the Dark Elves retreated to their vessel, leaving Curse behind to engage Thor and Loki. Having retrieved the Aether as planned, Malekith ordered the deaths of Thor and Loki. When Curse hurled black hole grenades, Loki swiftly pushed Foster away, narrowly avoiding being pulled into the vortex himself, with Thor rescuing him just in time. Prepared to counter the Dark Elves and thwart Malekith, Thor confronted Curse in battle, while Loki, armed only with his dagger, confronted a group of Dark Elves. Surrounded but undeterred, Loki relied on his agility and cunning, swiftly dispatching his adversaries. As he observed Thor struggling against Curse, Loki resolved to aid his brother, determined to overcome their formidable foes and halt Malekith's plans. Faking death. Witnessing Thor's struggle against Curse, Loki rushed to his brother's aid, driving his blade into Curse's back and through his chest. In retaliation, Curse seized Loki and impaled him upon the same blade. Despite his grievous wound, Loki managed one final act of deception, activating a black hole grenade which engulfed Curse, obliterating him instantly and avenging Frigga's death. As Curse met his demise and Loki appeared gravely wounded, Thor hurried to his side, promising to inform Odin of Loki's valor. Meeting his brother's gaze, Loki clarified that his actions were not for Odin's sake, but to honor Frigga. With his skin paling, Loki seemingly succumbed to his injuries in Thor's embrace, as Thor mourned his apparent demise. Leaving Loki behind on Svartalfheim, Thor and Jane Foster continued their mission to confront Malekith. However, Loki's demise was merely another illusion. Though weakened, he remained alive, biding his time until Thor and Foster departed for Earth. Seizing an opportunity, Loki dispatched an Einherjar guard, assuming the guard's identity and returning to Asgard undetected. Under the guise of the guard, Loki reported to Odin the discovery of a body on the battlefield, his apparent demise deceiving even the Allfather, King of Asgard, stealing the throne. Having successfully assumed Odin's identity, Loki seized control of the throne of Asgard. Upon Thor's triumph over Malekith, he returned to Asgard to deliver his report to Odin, who was actually Loki in disguise. Pretending to be Odin, Loki offered Thor the throne, but Thor declined, acknowledging Loki's supposed sacrifice. Thor then extended Mjolnir to Loki, who declined, asserting that only the worthy could wield it. Grateful for Loki's actions, Thor departed. Reverting to his true form, Loki reveled in his triumph of reclaiming the throne. In the course of his reign, Lorelei managed to escape to Earth through one of the hidden passages between realms. Disguised as Odin, Loki instructed Sif to capture Lorelei and bring her back to Asgard. Meanwhile, Heimdall observed the arrival of the Kree on Earth. To maintain his facade, Loki sent Sif to investigate, fearing exposure. Concerned about potential exposure, Loki eventually banished Sif from Asgard. To prevent Thor from detecting any inconsistencies and uncovering his ruse, Loki granted Thor freedom to act as he pleased, ensuring Thor's absence from Asgard. This allowed Loki to rule undisturbed and revel in the riches and powers it afforded him. Moreover, Loki replaced Heimdall with Scourge as the guardian of the Bifrost Bridge, tasking Scourge with alerting him upon Thor's return. Enjoying his newfound authority, Loki portrayed himself as a tragic figure to the Asgardians, commissioning a grand statue and even orchestrating a stage production depicting his own demise, which he personally scripted. Search for Odin. After 4 years of indulging in his reign over Asgard, Loki, still disguised as Odin, found pleasure in mingling with the Asgardians, partaking in grapes and attending a play titled The Tragedy of Loki of Asgard, which dramatized his supposed demise on Svartalfheim. Engaging with the performers, Loki quoted lines from the play, expressing delight as they concluded their performance. Unexpectedly, Thor arrived, bearing the crown of black fire following his escape from Muspelheim. Suspicious, Thor questioned Loki's knowledge of the artifact before securing it in Odin's vault. Loki, apprehensive about maintaining his disguise, inquired if Thor planned to return to Midgard soon. Thor's negative response heightened Loki's anxiety. Thor revealed troubling dreams of Ragnarok and the chaos plaguing the Nine Realms, criticizing Odin's inaction. Despite Loki's attempts to justify his rule, Thor remained unconvinced. Threatening Loki with Mjolnir, Thor forced him to drop his facade, shocking the Asgardians. Scourge arrived from Himmelbjorg, announcing Thor's presence much to Loki's chagrin. Exposed, Loki defended his actions, claiming Asgard had flourished under his rule. However, Thor demanded to know Odin's whereabouts, suspecting foul play. In response, Loki divulged Odin's location at Shady Acres Care Home. Thor delegated temporary guardianship of the Bifrost Bridge before departing with Loki to investigate further. Encountering Doctor Strange. Upon reaching Earth, they found the retirement home in New York City where Loki had left Odin had been demolished, leaving Loki clueless about Odin's whereabouts. When Loki insisted he couldn't have foreseen this, Thor playfully teased him about his attire, likening it to that of a witch. Thor then questioned how Loki could still be alive after witnessing his supposed demise at the hands of Curse, expressing his grief, to which Loki cynically responded with gratitude. While Thor posed for a photo with two humans, Loki overheard chatter about Thor's breakup with Jane Foster, but his attention was soon drawn to a disturbance beneath him. Peering down, Loki saw a portal forming beneath, denying any involvement before inadvertently falling through it. The portal, conjured by Doctor Strange, aimed to prevent Loki from causing chaos on Earth. As Loki tumbled through an unknown expanse, Thor sought out Doctor Strange, who offered to locate Odin on the condition that they all return to Asgard promptly to avoid a repeat of the Battle of New York. After a prolonged descent, Strange remembered Loki's plight and swiftly transported him to the New York Sanctum, where an enraged Loki confronted Strange for the extended fall. Upon hearing Strange suggest Thor handle his brother henceforth, Loki, seething with annoyance, attempted to attack Strange, disparaging him as a second-rate magician and brandishing knives in retaliation. Unfazed, Strange refused to engage and promptly sent Loki and Thor through a portal to Norway, where Odin awaited. Father's farewell. Accompanied by Thor, the two siblings emerged from Doctor Strange's portal and reunited with Odin, who stood alone on the cliff's edge in Norway, overlooking the vast landscape. As they approached, Odin seemed preoccupied, mentioning he could hear Frigga's voice, a statement Thor attributed to lingering effects of Loki's magic, which Loki refuted. Odin disclosed that he had broken free from Loki's enchantment but commended Loki for the effective spell, surprising him with rare praise. Seated amidst the scenic backdrop, Odin urged his sons to appreciate the beauty of their surroundings, reminiscing about Asgard. Thor asserted he had averted Ragnarok, but Odin revealed it was imminent, triggered not by Surtur but by the arrival of Hela, Thor's long-lost sister imprisoned in Hell. As Odin shared this startling revelation, expressing his love for Loki and Thor, his form dissolved into energy, carried away by the wind. Thor, consumed by rage and grief, summoned storm clouds overhead, blaming Loki for their father's demise, attributing it to Loki's actions of exiling Odin to Earth, stripping him of his powers and hastening his death. As Thor's anger manifested in lightning, Loki, apprehensive, attempted to placate him. Hela's return. Thrown from the Bifrost. With Odin's passing and his journey into the afterlife, Loki and Thor found themselves compelled to set aside their differences. As Hela emerged from her imprisonment, liberated by Odin's demise, the brothers donned their Asgardian attire to greet her upon her return. Hela remarked on her absence during their father's demise, prompting Thor to introduce himself as Odin's son, a claim she found visually dubious. In an attempt to negotiate, Loki proposed an arrangement with Hela, drawing a comparison to Odin's diplomatic approach. However, Hela dismissed Thor's resemblance to Odin, demanding their submission as she brandished her necro swords. Despite Loki's efforts to reason with her, they witnessed Hela's immense power firsthand as she obliterated Mjolnir. Recognizing their overwhelming disadvantage, Loki swiftly summoned Volstagg and Fandral to return them to Asgard. However, Thor cautioned against using the Bifrost Bridge, fearing it would lead Hela directly to their homeland. His warning came too late as Hela pursued them, eventually ejecting both Thor and Loki mid-transport, leaving Loki to believe Thor had met his end. Living on Sakaar. After being ejected from the Bifrost Bridge by Hela, Loki found himself on Sakaar, a bizarre and unfamiliar environment. However, he swiftly won the favor of the Grandmaster, who considered Loki a friend and frequently invited him to participate in the Conquest of Champions, a spectacle the Grandmaster relished. Over several weeks, Loki indulged in revelry with the Sakarans, regaling them with tales of the duel at the Rainbow Bridge and relishing their reactions to his adventurous anecdotes before his arrival on Sakaar. While entertaining the Sakarans with his stories, Loki was astounded to discover that Thor was still alive, having been captured by the Grandmaster and prepared to face his champion. Their reunion was marked by Thor's confusion, and Loki's explanation that he had not undergone the same experiences as Thor since their separation. Under the watchful eye of the Grandmaster, Loki expressed his inability to secure Thor's release from captivity. When the Grandmaster inquired about Loki's relationship with Thor, Loki denied any acquaintance, prompting Thor to reveal they were brothers, though Loki emphasized his status as an adoptee. The Grandmaster asserted that Thor could only earn his freedom by defeating his champion and dispatched him to meet the gladiators, including Korg and Meek, while Loki remained at the Grandmaster's side, enjoying the luxuries afforded to him. Suggestion to Thor. In an attempt to secure his own escape from Sakaar, Loki covertly communicated with Thor via a holographic projection in his cell within the Contest of Champions area. He urged Thor to forsake Asgard and join him at the Grandmaster's side for a life of luxury. However, Thor rebuffed any dialogue with his adoptive brother, responding only by hurling stones at the projection. Loki proposed a plan to Thor, suggesting they betray the Grandmaster and seize control of Sakaar together. Yet, as Thor continued to express his frustration through thrown stones, Loki's demeanor shifted to one of genuine concern about facing Hela again. He reminded Thor of Hela's overwhelming power, demonstrated by her effortless destruction of Mjolnir during their initial encounter, highlighting her superiority over both of them. As Loki prepared to depart, Thor cast blame upon him for the predicaments, accusing him of contributing to Odin's demise and subsequently releasing Hela from Hel, which led to the deaths of the Warriors Three. Despite Thor's accusations, Loki remained composed, cautioning him about the Grandmaster's formidable champion and revealing the substantial wager placed against Thor. With Korg's arrival signaling the end of the illusion, Loki's projection dissipated. Reunion with Hulk. Amidst his continued enjoyment of life in Sakaar, Loki eagerly attended Thor's participation in the Contest of Champions. Sipping on a drink as he observed, Loki witnessed Thor don his helmet and prepare for battle, armed with Doug's mace and shield along with a pair of swords. Confident in his prediction of Thor's defeat, Loki anticipated a profitable outcome from the impending fight. Perched above, he eagerly awaited the entrance of Thor's opponent, only to be shocked and horrified when it turned out to be Hulk, recalling the relentless beating he had endured from the Green Giant during the Battle of New York. Unwilling to face Hulk again, Loki attempted to leave Sakaar, but the Grandmaster intervened, insisting that Loki remain and witness the fight. Concealing his prior encounter with Hulk from the Grandmaster, Loki sat uncomfortably silent as Thor joyously reunited with his fellow Avenger, pointing out Loki's presence to Hulk. Thor shared updates about Hela's return and the destruction of Mjolnir, but Hulk grew irritated when Thor referred to him as Bruce Banner, leading to a furious onslaught. From his vantage point, Loki observed the intense battle between Thor and Hulk, relishing in Thor's struggles as Hulk gained the upper hand. Delighted when Hulk replicated his past actions by slamming Thor into the ground, Loki gleefully remarked on Thor experiencing a taste of his own medicine. As the battle raged, Thor suddenly tapped into a surge of power, engulfing himself in lightning and delivering a devastating blow to Hulk, damaging his Sakaaran battle armor. However, Grandmaster intervened to prevent Thor's victory by activating Thor's obedience disc, causing him to collapse and allowing Hulk to emerge triumphant, much to Loki's disappointment. Challenging Valkyrie. While Loki continued relishing the opulent lifestyle of Sakaar, Thor and Hulk mysteriously vanished from their cells, prompting the Grandmaster to erupt in fury over their escape and demand their immediate recapture. Determined to maintain the Grandmaster's favor, Loki and the chief bounty hunter, Scrapper 142, received orders to apprehend Thor and Hulk, with a hefty bounty promised for their capture to prevent the loss of the Grandmaster's prized champion. In a bid to appease the Grandmaster, Loki pledged to retrieve Thor and Hulk within hours, echoing a similar promise made by Scrapper 142. Despite an interruption from Loki, the Grandmaster refrained from executing him, dismissing the offense as unworthy of death. Tasked with their mission, Loki and Scrapper 142 left the Grandmaster's presence to embark on their hunt. Their departure, however, quickly devolved into a confrontation as Loki and the Scrapper clashed, drawing knives in a duel fueled by tension. Amidst the skirmish, Loki noticed a tattoo on her arm, realizing her true identity as the last remaining Valkyrie. Unwilling to expose this secret, Valkyrie swiftly subdued Loki, warning him to choose his words carefully. Undeterred, Loki used his magic to force Valkyrie to relive the traumatic massacre of the Valkyrie by Hela's hand, inciting her fury. In retaliation, Valkyrie knocked Loki unconscious with a powerful blow before securing him in chains within her quarters, betraying the Grandmaster. After being captured by Valkyrie, Loki found himself chained inside of her quarters, awaiting her return. Eventually, he became part of a peace offering to Thor and Bruce Banner, who had reverted to his human form. Thor, initially skeptical of Loki's identity, confirmed it by hurling a bottle at him, while Banner reminisced about their last encounter during the Battle of New York, prompting a calm but menacing response from Loki. Despite his restraints, Loki eavesdropped on Thor, Banner, and Valkyrie as they strategized their escape from Sakaar via the Devil's Anus. While discussion turned to the need for a sturdy ship, Loki interjected, suggesting they utilize the Grandmaster's fleet in exchange for his own safe passage out of Sakaar. Banner, still wary of Loki after his earlier threat, hesitated to trust him. Loki, however, smirked as Thor recounted a tale of Loki's deception involving transforming into a snake to stab him. Ultimately, they agreed to Loki's proposal, acknowledging the necessity of a distraction and opting to start a rebellion instead of unleashing the Hulk as Loki had suggested. Sakaaran Rebellion. As Valkyrie incited the uprising on Sakaar by arming Korg and the fellow gladiators, Loki and Thor collaborated to hijack one of the Grandmaster's shield generator-fitted ships. Armed with Sakaaran laser rifles, they brazenly plowed through the Sakaaran guards, obstructing their path. Taking cover, Loki remarked on the irony of Odin bringing them together only for his demise to seemingly tear them apart. While Thor continued to engage the guards, Loki unlocked doorways, musing that they might as well embrace estrangement. As they entered an elevator, a Sakaaran guard confronted them, whom Thor dispatched by causing him to inadvertently fire into the air. In the elevator, Loki proposed remaining on Sakaar, a notion Thor surprisingly endorsed, acknowledging its chaotic nature. Thor confessed his deep admiration for Loki and their shared desire for eternal camaraderie, recognizing its improbability, which visibly stirred Loki. Anticipating further confrontations, Thor suggested their infamous get help tactic, despite Loki's protests. Succumbing to Thor's insistence, Loki was thrown at the guards, a move he begrudgingly accepted. During the theft of the Commodore, Loki betrayed them, creating an illusion to distract Thor while he informed the Grandmaster. Revealing his treachery, Loki rationalized it as merely pragmatic, seeking financial gain. Unbeknownst to Loki, Thor had anticipated this, secretly activating an obedience disc on him, rendering him immobile. As Loki lay shocked on the ground, the Sakaaran rebellion triumphed, and Thor, Valkyrie, and Bruce Banner infiltrated Asgard. Eventually freed by the rebels, Loki joined their cause as Korg deactivated the obedience disc and invited Loki to assist in stealing the Statesman, recognizing his leadership potential. Rescuing Asgardians, Loki and his fellow rebels commandeered the Statesman and fled Sakaar. Taking charge of the ship, Loki opted for a rare act of altruism, aiding the Revengers in evacuating the surviving Asgardians from Hela's grasp. Emerging from the shadows, Loki relished his newfound heroism, announcing himself as the savior to the grateful Asgardians. Amidst the throngs of Asgardians, Loki reunited with Heimdall, who foresaw his arrival. Alongside the remaining warriors and the Sakaaran rebels led by Korg and Meek, Loki fiercely battled Hela's relentless berserkers, striving to ensure the Asgardians' escape aboard the Statesman. In the heat of battle, Loki and his allies clashed with the berserkers, with Thor and Valkyrie joining the fray. Employing his cunning, Loki used his helmet to incapacitate the berserkers, aiding in pushing them back and enabling the Asgardians to flee. Taking a brief respite, Thor remarked on Loki's tardiness, noting Thor's own missing eye. As Hela continued her pursuit, Loki proposed using a lightning blast against her, but Thor insisted it would be futile. Recognizing the need for drastic measures, Thor urged Loki to awaken Surtur to vanquish Hela, initiating Ragnarok. While Thor and Valkyrie engaged Hela in battle, Loki piloted the Commodore to Valaskjalf, pondering the audacity of their plan. In a daring move, he infiltrated Odin's vault, seizing the Crown of Black Fire and discreetly secured the Tesseract. As Ragnarok commenced, the Revengers and the surviving Asgardians, aided by the Sakaaran rebels, fled Asgard, witnessing its destruction and the end of Hela's tyranny. Asgard's final days. Making amends. As Thor adjusted to his new eye patch, Loki commented on how it resembled their father's look. Assuming Loki had left, Thor humorously mused about offering him a hug if he were present. When Thor tossed an object in Loki's direction, Loki deftly caught it, assuring Thor of his presence. Encountering Heimdall aboard the Statesman, Loki instinctively braced himself against a wall and offered an explanation. Observing Heimdall's demeanor, Loki initially thought he seemed angry, but quickly second-guessed himself. Heimdall greeted Loki, whose conviction wavered upon hearing the tone of Heimdall's voice. Convinced that Heimdall was enraged over Loki's past actions while impersonating Odin, Loki attempted to smooth things over. Heimdall affirmed Loki's assumption, prompting Loki's hesitant smile and offer of a handshake, only for Heimdall to caution him against pushing his luck before departing. Thor and Loki then proceeded to the deck, where Loki witnessed Thor's coronation as the new king of Asgard, finally accepting his brother's sovereignty. Thor then resolved to establish Asgard on Earth. Final stand on the Statesman. During their space journey towards Earth, Loki approached Thor to discuss their destination, expressing uncertainty about returning there after all that had transpired. Suddenly, a massive ship appeared before the Statesman. Belonging to Thanos and his Black Order, the ship boarded the Statesman, wreaking havoc and claiming the lives of half of its occupants, while the other half managed to escape. Loki found himself among those who remained as captives. Thanos demanded the Space Stone from Loki, who initially tried to conceal its presence. However, under threat of Thor's life and facing the Power Stone pressed against Thor's head, Loki reluctantly revealed the Tesseract. In a desperate attempt to thwart Thanos, Loki unleashed Hulk on him, echoing Iron Man's words from their past encounter in Stark Tower. As Hulk charged, Loki dropped the Tesseract and rushed to push Thor out of harm's way. Despite Hulk's efforts, Thanos easily subdued him and proceeded to crush the Tesseract, adding its encased Infinity Stone to his gauntlet. Triumphantly, Thanos ordered his Black Order on Earth to retrieve the remaining Infinity Stones. Feigning allegiance to Thanos, Loki secretly readied a dagger, intending to strike. However, Thanos anticipated the betrayal, effortlessly thwarting Loki's attempt and mocking him for his choice of words. Despite facing imminent demise, Loki remained defiant, confronting Thanos with the uncertainty of his failure and refusal to become a god as he sought. Unmoved, Thanos calmly ended Loki's defiance, crushing his neck in front of Thor. With Loki's lifeless body at Thor's feet, Thanos callously remarked that this time there would be no resurrection for Loki. Legacy: Thor's revenge. Thor mourned over Loki's death, weeping over his lifeless form as Thanos, empowered by the Infinity Stones, obliterated the Statesman and vanished with the Black Order. Along with half of the Asgardians, Loki's body was consumed in the explosion, left adrift amidst the wreckage. Thor, bearing both physical and emotional wounds, emerged as the sole survivor. In a somber conversation with Rocket of the Guardians of the Galaxy, Thor expressed a profound sense of finality regarding Loki's demise, acknowledging their reconciled relationship and condemning Loki's sacrifice for the Space Stone. Consumed by grief and fueled by a desire for vengeance, Thor resolved to exact retribution upon Thanos. With the aid of Atri, he crafted Stormbreaker, confronting Thanos in Wakanda and inflicting a grievous wound upon him. Despite his determination to end the mad tyrant, Thor's efforts were thwarted when Thanos executed the snap with the Infinity Gauntlet. Weeks later, the remaining Avengers and Guardians launched a retaliatory assault on Thanos at his secluded farm, only to find that he had destroyed the Infinity Stones. Determined to mete out justice for Loki's death, Thor mercilessly beheaded Thanos with Stormbreaker, bringing an end to the Mad Titan's reign of terror and fulfilling his vow of vengeance. In a solemn tribute, Thor later inked Loki's name onto his back, alongside those of other fallen comrades and kin. AvengerCon. In 2025, despite his antagonistic deeds towards humanity, attendees at the inaugural New Jersey AvengerCon chose to don costumes portraying Loki, changing his fate. The Time Variance Authority captured an alternate version of Loki for deviating too much from the sacred timeline. Led into a chamber by Mobius M. Mobius, Loki was presented with a time scroll depicting his alternate fate, which depicted him as being strangled by Thanos. This revelation shifted Loki's demeanor from smugness to dread, prompting him to confide in Mobius and eventually embrace a heroic path. And that, my friends, is the entire Loki timeline for the MCU, for this variant, so far anyway. What did you think? What's your favorite Loki moment? What's your least favorite Loki moment? Do you think we'll be seeing more from this Prince of Mischief? Make sure you let me know down in the comments and subscribe for more like this. Thanks for watching. I'll leave you with this. Excelsior!